This segment is brought to you by JigMasters Jigs. When in doubt, get the jig out. Go to JigMasters.com and use promo code PNF20 and save 20% off your next jig order today.
Welcome to the Paddle and Fin Podcast, the Bass Fishing for Noobs segment, where we try to improve our skills as an angler by learning new techniques or improving the ones we already know. I'm your host, Ryan Milford. Welcome to the Bass Fishing for Noobs on the Paddle and Fin Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan. And today we have a couple morons on the show that are making fun of me as I try to talk. We got Brian the Killer Schiller and Josh Eldridge. I wanted to put some between your name, but I couldn't think of anything to put between there.
Trash Panda.
Trash Panda.
So we're here on Bass Fishing for Noobs. What are we going to talk about?
Cheese?
Nah, can't talk about cheese anymore. Beat that one down.
Yeah. And, yes, so, you know, one thing, what do y'all plan on doing for your tournament year? Like, Josh, you plan on doing any tournaments this year?
That's going to be probably maybe a couple of them here and there, but for the most part, I'm not planning on doing anything. Like, I don't have plans, like I don't have any picked out. So if there's a weekend that comes up and I'm like, hey, that'd be cool to do, I'll go ahead and do it. But other than that, no.
Brian, I know you were hard on it last year, and you've talked about you're not going to be as serious about it this year. What do you plan on doing any of the national level tournaments this year? Any at all?
Yeah, I'll do some. I'm not sure which ones yet. I've kind of been rethinking that after a conversation that took place this past weekend. That's all I can say.
Lame. So lame.
Well, one thing.
So secretive.
I mean, there'd be no suspense if I wasn't secretive. Then you just know everything. I mean, got to keep you coming back for more, bro.
Still lame.
That's the way the famous people do it.
Yeah, right. They're like, oh, just wait. My media agent will contact you.
My people call your people. We'll do lunch.
Right.
But no, what, I have had some questions about the whole tournament thing. One thing is, when you travel to another state for a tournament, do you have to buy a fishing license, or is that included in the permit for the tournament?
No, you got to buy a fishing license for every state you go to.
Okay, so
when you're figuring on traveling for tournaments and you're planning your year out, you definitely need to figure that in a cost. And then not only that, but like look at, like some states like Kansas, right? Like when I went down there last year, I think it was like a 3-day or a 5-day fishing license. Whereas Tennessee, I knew I'd be there multiple times. So I bought a full year license. So like there's ways to kind of like navigate through that to save a couple bucks, but that's definitely something to consider like in your cost. And you should definitely check all the Department of Natural Resources regulations and things like that, because like I know like certain states like Ohio, right? They require you to have stickers on your boats, don't they, Josh?
Yeah, we have to register our kayaks like boats, but there's two versions of it. There's one that's like I can't remember the specific name of it, but it's like it's a non-standard one, and it's like it's for 3 years. I think the cost is actually slightly more expensive. I have no idea why, because it doesn't really make sense, but it's only a few bucks more. But that one you put on like a kayak that you'll never motorize. And then like the one I have like the traditional like OH and like 6-7 digits like that you see on a lot of boats. And that signifies a boat that can still have the option of putting a motor on it. Like my wife has I think it's called alternative registration, and so she can never put like a motor on hers. But I kept mine with I don't know why, because at the time I was like, I'll never put one on here, but for some reason I just did the standard one. So if I wanted to put a Torpedo on it, I can, and it doesn't affect anything. But if I was to try to do that with hers, I'd have to go back and probably re-register all over again or something weird like that. I think it's kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest. I'm not sure.
No, I'm guessing that there's a price difference between the two.
There is, but it's not significant. I think one was like 25 and the other one was 21 or something weird. It didn't make sense though, because you would think that they might charge you more for the option to be able to put a motor on your boat, but it's actually the other way around.
Really?
Interesting.
That's just some of the dumb shit that Ohio likes to do.
So, is that a one-time thing or a yearly thing? Or
it's every 3 years.
Every 3 years?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Here in Tennessee, if you don't put a motor on it, you don't have to put any kind of sticker or register anything like that. The only time you have to deal with any of that is if you put a motor on it. Then you have to register it and put the numbers on the side like a boat and all that.
Yeah.
That's the same in Illinois too. Illinois and Wisconsin are the same. The only time you have to do that is when you go from human powered to electric or gas powered.
Now, so I've never took a boat over state line, and I don't use a motor on my kayak. So do you have to, like, does that, if you take your kayak that you have registered in your state for a motor to another state, is it legal with that, or?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. As long as you have it registered or whatever. I mean, I guess you could possibly run into an issue, but if like that state doesn't or is like, say you came to Ohio and you guys don't have registration numbers on your boats, you could potentially get stopped and they'll probably check your ID or something like that, and you'll be like, explain like, well, we don't have to register our boats. They could be possibly butt heads about it and say, hey, you can't be out here then if you don't have like your boat registered or something, but I'm not 100% sure. I know, Brian, you didn't really, yours was registered because you had stickers on yours from having that trolling motor when you brought your Bonafide here, so you didn't run into that. But we didn't run into any ODNR guys when Jay was here. He probably didn't have stickers, did he?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, they'd probably be cool about it and be like, "Oh, we don't have the same law," But I mean, if they wanted to, they could probably say something. But I don't think that most DNR guys are going to say anything for the most part like that. Especially if you show them your license and stuff like that, and they know what the guidelines in Illinois are versus Ohio. So,
you talking about his old boat made me think of something. I didn't know a whole lot of big kayak brands before I started listening to podcasts, and this was one of the first podcasts I ever listened to. So, Bonafide, I've always known as Bonafide because of Brian.
It's Bonafide.
Here lately, I mean, Luther himself calls it a Bonafide. So.
It's Bonafide.
I say Bonafide too.
I say it because I've heard Brian say it so many times. Did you start that trend, or did you get that from somebody else?
I think it's one of those things, like, depends what part of the country you're from and how you pronounce words. You know, tomato,
or
tomato.
what podcast to listen to.
Potato, potato.
I mean, dude, Ryan, there's about what 500 words that you pronounce differently than us Northerners. So
here we go.
My favorite Ryan saying is, "I'm just making it, man." Just over here trying to make it, man. I've been catching myself saying that, dude. Somebody would be like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "Just over here trying to make it, man." You're starting a trend, dude.
Nothing wrong with it.
It's the same thing.
See, now I got catchphrases I didn't even know I had. But
yeah, dude, I love it.
I was just wondering if you started that trend, because I've been hearing a lot more people saying it like that here lately.
I don't know, dude. That's just the way I've always said it.
That's how I say it.
Yeah,
that's how I say it, Brian.
I think it's just one of those things where depends how you interpret it. I don't know.
I think it sounds better bona fide.
Bona fide. Yeah, it's got some oomph behind it. You know. But yeah, I mean, as far as like traveling state to state, like the biggest thing is just checking DNR regulations. I mean, you could come up here from Tennessee with your boat and you wouldn't have to do anything. You know, as long as, like, if you had the motor, it would have to be registered in Tennessee. But if you were just coming up to paddle, you know,
still in the water and go.
Yeah. And like Josh said, I mean, I fished Ohio with him. I didn't have stickers on my boat. I did have registration mailed in. So, like, the way that works, because I think, Josh, you guys just go to the DMV, right? And you get all your stuff right there. So the way they do it in Illinois is you fill out a form, you mail it in with like a money order or a check or something like that. And then you get your sticker and stuff. Usually takes like, I think it's like 60 to 90 days. So like 2 to 3 months. You know, lovely state of Illinois. We're just so fast to do things around here.
You're fast at issuing toll tickets, though. Really fast.
I told you to pay online, bro. Told you to pay online. You didn't listen. But, you know, so as long as I got my paperwork on me and I go to, for say, Tennessee, like, and I get stopped by Tennessee Department of Natural Resources or whatever, I'll be fine, you know, because I got it registered in some way. So it's just, you know, like I said, it varies from state to state. But yeah, going back to like the original question, you know, yes, you would need to get a fishing license for whatever state you're in. And then not only that, but like, I think in Tennessee, right, you got to get a trout stamp if you're going to fish trout streams and stuff like that.
I'm not 100% of that, because I've recently fished a small stream because I saw a bunch of bass in it. You know, it's real shallow, 2 or 3 foot in the deep spots. So, and you could see everything. I saw a bunch of bass, so I was fishing it, and the TWRA agent pulled up and came and talked to me, checked my license and everything. I don't have a trout stamp. Almost a tramp stamp. I don't have a trout stamp.
To be determined.
Somebody has a bona fide one now.
Do not. Oh,
but
you sure you guys want to open this can of worms? I mean, you better watch yourselves.
It's all
anyways. Fun. I don't have a trout stamp, and apparently, pretty much exactly where I was fishing was where they released a bunch of trout. That's like their spot where they released them.
Gotcha.
And so he was asking me about that. I think he didn't like ask to see or whatever, but I think he was kind of looking to see what kind of lure I was using. But yeah, he was cool about it. He's like, just know, if you ain't got a trout sticker, you can't like harvest any trout. I'm like, I don't plan on
Right.
keeping anything. I'm just catch and release. But so he didn't give me a hard time, but
Yeah, well, I just bring it up because, like, I know, like here in Illinois, if you're fishing Lake Michigan, you were going for trout and salmon, you have to have a trout and salmon stamp. Wisconsin's the same way. Like if you're fishing Great Lakes, for trout and salmon, you have to have a stamp for that. And then if you were going to go fish some of the trout streams in Southwest Wisconsin, you have to have a whole different stamp for that. Now, most states, like the general fishing license, covers bass. So if you're just going bass fishing, you'd be good with whatever, And usually, like the 5-day or the 3-day or 1 week fishing license, that'll cover those other species because you're just paying a general price for a few days and you won't need that added stamp. So that's something to consider. Like say you were going to, just throwing this out there, but like, say you were going to Colorado and you got a 5-day license, but you were going to fish bass 3 days and trout 2, like that 5-day license will count for trout fishing.
I think you have to pay extra here in Tennessee.
I think that's what it is too. I looked at it once and that's why I brought it up. But yeah, it's just something to consider. Like if you were doing like a multi-day trip and you figured, oh, maybe I'll throw some trout fishing in one day just to like change it up a little bit. But I think that's an interesting topic that doesn't necessarily get talked about in kayak fishing, like the whole rules and regulation thing. I think it's just it's a lot of times assumed, but people that may have never ventured out from, like Ryan, never ventured out from Tennessee, to go fish other bodies of water, because you got to think too, like you're only fishing the tournament, 1 or 2 days, but you're going to be there pre-fishing. So, those days you're pre-fishing, you're not exactly covered, so to speak, or whatever. If it, for instance, was the way you were thinking it was. But no, good question there, man.
But I know we have to pay extra for a trout permit. So I assume non-residents have to do so as well. But yeah, I was actually looking at it earlier. I just pulled it back up. Our, small game and fishing combo is $33. For a trout permit, is an extra $21.
Yeah.
And
it's probably also the reason probably that added kind of higher cost in your mind is because they have restocking programs.
Yeah.
As to where like, your traditional game fish like bass or pike or whatever aren't going to be stocked. So that probably funds the programs to be able to raise trout and release them in the wild. So
right.
That's true and not true, because like there's still lakes that get stocked with bass and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's just not in the frequency and the amount that the trout are raised.
Yeah.
And trout are extremely delicate fish where they're super sensitive to like water temperature and oxygen in the water. So it costs a lot to breed those fish because you're constantly keeping water temperatures. So like, for instance, we were talking about this, I think it was this past weekend, down at the Indy show. Like you go to all these fishing shows and you see the trout pond, right? And every single trout pond has some kind of fountain in it, and that's because it's churning the water and creating more oxygen in it. And not only that, but that water that they're cycling is getting cooled. Because if that water got up to room temperature, all those trout would die.
Yeah.
So, I mean, go ahead, man.
Well, I was just gonna say because trout are primarily like a cold water fish, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like out of the trout species, like the three most common, you got brown trout, rainbow trout, and brook trout, right? And then there's skews off of all those. Like a steelhead is actually a rainbow trout, but it's like a big lake rainbow trout. So
Yep.
like when you're fishing Lake Michigan and you catch a big rainbow, it's actually considered a steelhead. But out of those three, a brown trout can survive more harsh conditions compared to the other two.
Well, see, when I was talking to that TWRA agent, he was asking if I had seen any trout because they had just released some like 2 weeks beforehand, and I said I hadn't, and he's like, well, they're probably all gone now. People probably done fished them all out, and so that made me curious. I'm like, well, one, you know, it's probably hard for trout to survive down here in Tennessee if they're primarily a cold water fish because the water, I think we've been in water temp like I think the lowest it's gotten is like maybe in the 40s. Usually it's been pretty warm, and summertime is going to get even worse. So, but I was I was thinking about trying trout fishing this year, but if in 2 weeks all the trout that they released are supposed to already be gone, is it worth me spending that money on something that I might not even get to do because timelines might not line up?
Well, I would say if you have an interest in doing it, definitely try. Like trout are very they like current like smallmouth do, man. They probably actually spend more time like in direct current than what you would see for a smallmouth. Isn't that right, Brian? In a sense, especially if you're fishing like rivers. And so for an example, here in Ohio, right, we're more north of you. Now, when I was in Tennessee this past summer, I've learned that there's a lot of trout in the river systems down there. And probably the reason why, Ryan, isn't necessarily about your air temperature as much as it is like true natural spring fed colder water temperatures is what they survive well, and it doesn't really necessarily make a difference of what that air temperature is because you guys have like super nice clean cool water overall in general. Like so
You were in East Tennessee, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it's just, it's if they're stocking them there, they probably do well there. Like we have a river here in Southwest Ohio. There's one river where you might catch one somewhere else, but it's kind of difficult. But we have one river that I went for the first time like 2 winters ago, went in there and caught like 10 brown trout. First time I ever been, just using inline spinners, dude. Never had an idea what it was doing. And the reason why is that river is a natural spring-fed river, and it stays generally colder year-round than what like the Great Miami or the Little Miami. It's called the Mad River. And but if you fish like the southern section of the Mad River, you really kind of won't find them. You might run into one occasionally that might come downstream, but you have to actually go further north section of this river to find them, and they stock them in there. It's not like some obviously crazy awesome trout stream by any means, but they do survive in there. Occasionally somebody will pull a big one out of there, and it's pretty cool. It's healthy enough that they'll survive. I don't know what like the mortality rate probably is. It's probably a little on the higher side, but there is probably a lot of people that are harvesting them out of there as well. So, but yeah, dude, when we were down in Pigeon Forge and that area like that, I remember going over and they're like, yeah, if you're into trout fishing, you got to get in those streams out there. And I'm like, that looks like primary smallmouth habitat, but
Yeah, I
But
mean, you're pretty spot on. I know East Tennessee has a lot more trout streams,
there's a
but
lot of mountains out there
yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah. But so like here in Illinois, they do the same thing. They release a bunch of trout, and they'll do it usually in I think it's like the first weekend in April. This is a trout opener, and they usually get fished out. But it's kind of a good thing because I mean you'll have some that lurk around. Like I remember I caught one with Jay late in the year, um, this past uh, this past year because um, they'll release them in April when the water's still cold. They'll survive till they get pretty much caught out. But there are some spring fed areas and some cooler watering holes, so to speak, where those fish can survive, where there's plenty of oxygen rolling through there. So I mean, I don't think it's too far off. Like, depending if that river you were fishing was spring fed or not, would probably determine like if those trout could survive. But more than likely, it's just cold right now because it's cold down there.
Yeah.
And eventually, when that water does warm up, those trout could eventually die because of that. But more than likely they'll get caught before then.
Yeah.
But you say it's cold down here. It was like almost 70 degrees yesterday. That's the
Right?
that's the first day we've had like that in a long while. But
He's like, man, it was freezing. It was 50 out today.
Yeah.
Brian's like, yeah, it was -10 at his
Yeah.
house.
no,
Yeah. Actually, today was pretty nice. Today it got up to like 38, I think, but it felt like 45. But I mean, this past weekend down in Indy, man, it got really warm. It was like 50 something down there. I was like, man, why am I in a show right now? I should be fishing.
man, when Saturday when I was fishing, the high was like 50 degrees, and I'm out there in my coveralls and hoodie and two pairs of socks.
Man, I would have
Wearing,
been
like,
running
shorts.
around in shorts and t-shirt, man. Just
Yeah.
over here trying to make it, man.
So, uh, can we end this episode already? No, I'm playing. But no, that does make me think of something. I'm stoked right now because of my fishing experience this past weekend.
Yeah, man.
As y'all seen, I caught me a decent fish. It was my first swim bait fish, and yeah, and I was really proud of myself for like putting the puzzle pieces together and
Yeah.
finding this. I know. I think I told y'all about it. I don't. Listeners more than likely haven't heard about it, but I went out with my dad and my buddy on my dad's boat, and his fish finder hasn't been working on his boat, so we're basically just guessing where this fish are going to be. And it was starting to warm up a little bit, and we saw the stream coming down into the lake, and it was this little shallow stream flowing in, and we started thinking about it, like, it's getting, the sun's warm. I bet that water's probably warming up, and on top of that, the stream's probably bringing bugs and stuff into the water. So they're probably going to be over there getting that warmth and getting an easy meal. So we go over to the stream. The stream's like 2.5 foot wide. So three of us are all three casting right there. I'm casting right in front of that stream, and I'm throwing the swim bait and just slowly working it. And all of a sudden, I don't feel a bite. I've heard people talk about how when they're cold, they'll just kind of pick it up. I guess that's what happened, because all I felt was just start pulling on the line. I never felt like a hit. And I set the hook and brought it in. I'm guessing it was about a 4.5 pounder. And yeah, if it was cool catching that fish because it's a decent fish, but it was really cool like putting that puzzle together to figure out where they were going to be at.
Yeah, man, I was pretty happy for you when I saw the message come through. And, I think I've told you before, like, going back to, when you did your first podcast and you can name off every fish you caught in
Yeah.
like a 5-year span compared to, the latter half of last year, up until now, man, like, you don't even know how many fish you caught, and you've caught a lot of really nice fish, dude. And I think it's really starting to click with you, like, all right, I see this, I see that, I should do this and that, and you put it together, and it's cool, man. It's exciting, and I think not only that, but I think I've seen some listener feedback too, like come through where it's like, man, like, and even this past weekend, down at the indie show, I met a few listeners. It was interesting, man. Like a lot of people were like, thanks for what you guys do. Like it really helps me a lot. Like I'm new to kayak fishing and stuff like that. And I just gained so much knowledge from it, and which was great. Like that made me really happy because that's why we all do this, right? So, and we don't do it just for the audience. We do it for ourselves too,
Right.
like, I mean, I contribute some of my success to talking to other anglers and things like that. I mean, that's why we have the whole networking aspect of what we do. It's networking and chatting and talking with different anglers and manufacturers and product companies and things like that, man. Like it's a good way to grasp and pull from every little aspect and then kind of create your own thing and see it come to life, man. It's really cool. So super happy that like it's funny, man. Like I mean, I won't lie, dude. When I heard your first episode, I'm like, man, this kid needs some help.
Like both with podcasting
like,
and fishing.
Well, no, just on the fishing end, right? Like, because I see a lot of people, and this is, I'm not trying to make fun of you or slam you in any way, man, but like, I think a lot of people that try to get into fishing, have that similar, kind of success pattern that you had for the first few years where they're not really catching anything. They get really frustrated. They're trying to figure it out. And then they end up just throwing the rods in the corner of the garage and forgetting about them and not picking them back up again. Whereas on the other hand, like yourself, you set the rods down, picked up a microphone because you're like, man, I got to start talking to people so I can figure this out, dude. And I mean, kudos to you, man. Like that takes a lot of balls just to get behind a microphone and be like, hey, I don't know nothing about fishing, but I want to learn, so that's cool, man. And I think with that aspect being said, I think that's why people love your segment, dude, because they relate to you. Like, you're asking the questions that they have in mind. And I think that's one thing that we all talked about when we talked about bringing on Bass Fishing for Noobs was like, this is a great idea that Ryan's doing. Like, there's a lot of people just getting into fishing right now, whether they're 38 years old, 60 years old, or 15 years old, and we touched on that with Dusty. I touched on that with Dusty Yacker the other night on the live stream. Like, he's like the amount of information that's at our fingertips now is just absolutely unbelievable in ways to catch fish, where to fish, and things like that. So I don't know, man. It's cool, man. I was totally happy for you. Sorry I went on a long rant there, but
No,
I think it was something that needed to be said, dude. I mean, you should be proud of yourself for sure. Not only the fact that you're putting it together, but I think you have a big group of people out there that you don't even know about that are just starting to put it together at the same time with you because of you. You know what I mean? So that was my pat on the back for you, bro.
Well, I appreciate it. And to kind of go along with that, it felt pretty good earlier um, on the Paddle and Fin Instagram page. I'm not sure which one of the guys did it, but one of them took my picture of that fish I caught this weekend and posted it on there. And we had somebody comment on it. And how they like how I'm like completely honest about my inexperience with stuff. And that's something that I think I've talked about it before on here is how hard it is for me to admit that like sucking at something. How hard it was like swallow my pride and it'll do this. But it's after I've done that, it's been awesome. I've gotten to talk with a bunch of cool people. I've learned so much that I wouldn't have learned if I wouldn't have said, okay, I need help with this.
Sure.
And got advice.
No, absolutely, man. Everybody wants to be a Mike Iaconelli, Jacob Wheeler, one of the Guggen Squad kids, Scott Martin, Bill Dance, you name it,
Slide dog.
But
sorry,
but you're so full of it, dude. But I think a lot of people, you're spot on, dude. A lot of people fake it till they make it, right? Is kind of the deal, and you've been 100% legit and real about your experience, and it's cool, man. Because what's funny is like end of next season, I'm calling like Milford's gonna be slaying some bass, dude. Like throughout this season here, I see you really clicking and picking up on things. And you'll just go out there and you'll slam it, dude. You'll catch a bass from underneath Josh's kayak. and
I don't know, he don't like fishing with me anymore.
Fished with you once.
Never again. But what's cool is you can go back now and listen to like your first episodes and be like, man, what was I thinking? But you could see that journey and how your experiences and the knowledge you gain have transformed you into the person you become, or the fisherman you've become. Because I do that, like I go back, listen to like the first episodes. I'm like, man, this is so bad. Like, the hell was I talking about? And now I could pretty much spout off like, any kayak spec, name probably 100 different like sticks in the kayak tournament field and all that good stuff. You know what I mean? So it's cool, man. I mean, you've basically documented your journey through this little thing we call fishing, and I think you may not realize how much you appreciate it now, but a year from now, 5 years from now, I think you'll be able to look back on it and be like, that's probably one of the coolest things I ever did.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. Like I was actually thinking about it the other day, and after you said that, I just did it. Like, I wanted to download the episodes that I did. You only did like 3 episodes of my own podcast before y'all brought me on the Paddle and Fin, but is that good ice? You enjoying that? You got a mouthful of ice right now. You have a brain freeze?
I hope so.
But yeah, I want to go back and listen to like those first couple episodes I did on like when I was still on my own, and I know they're gonna be terrible. I had like no clue what I was doing for the most part, just getting started. But it's gonna be interesting. I'm gonna go back and listen to those at work.
Yeah, listen to them, man. I think you'll be surprised. You'll be like, man, like I really didn't know anything, or I knew very little, and now you'll be like, man, I'm a freaking genius. I know so much now, which is cool, dude. And obviously, you've gone into this with an open mind. You've taken the conversations you've had, the knowledge you've gained, you've absorbed it, and now you're going out there and putting it forth in motion, and it's really, affecting, your end result.
Yeah,
I mean, what, a month and a half ago you wanted to quit fishing and sell all your fishing gear and try to catch a big back. So, but that happens,
not gonna
dude.
live that one down.
Hey man, I've
very
been there.
frustrating day.
I think I just mentioned the other day. Anybody want to buy any fishing gear? Because I'm done. Maybe I was just talking to Josh. I don't know. I don't remember.
Brian quits the podcast once a week.
We'd all
that's a lot.
Nobody would listen to this podcast if we didn't have Brian. We got to have at least one famous person.
That's a lot, dude.
He's the wheelbarrow, and we're all just sitting in it for the ride.
Oh my God, you guys are so full of yourselves.
No, we're full of you.
Oh God.
But
So,
no.
Go ahead. All right, so like to kind of go off what like Ryan's talking about, and Brian also, is that the first couple years, like the first time I ever went out smallmouth fishing in the river, because that's what I did mainly for a long time. I mean, I just really got into lakes last year, but the first time I went out, I caught a nice smallmouth. That kind of hooked me. But dude, like after that, it was rough, man. There was times I was out there, I'm like, why am I doing this? And and then I just kind of step back and be like, it's because I enjoy being outside. I enjoy the experience of being outside, like, and fishing kind of mixed in another passion I had, which was like backpacking and hiking and stuff like that. So getting in the water and wading around and walking through the rivers where it's wooded, it's beautiful. I sit down, just kind of relax and soak that in. It was like kind of eye opening. I would go and I would catch like, some like tiny, like 2 12-inch like smallmouth or something, and I'd post it up in the forum, like I accomplished something. And then it was kind of funny though, because I'm reading this, I'm like, dude, these guys are they're catching huge smallmouth. Like, what is it? And then you gotta ask those questions, like, what, nobody's gonna give up their fishing spots, but what I started to do is ask the right questions, and that was, all right, well, what do I need to look for in the river, and the first thing was, well, look for bends. Look for a bend in the river. Look for rocks, get away from that muddy water. Like, the cleaner the water, the better chances you're going to have. And like, and I fished like different baits, and I would go through periods where I would just get stuck and I would just fish that bait and that same bait. And I still do that to this day. But what I kept, the more often that I got out of that comfort zone, the more successful I seemed to get. The more kind of chances that I took and fished new waters, the more successful I got. I think that's one of the things that you'll see like a new angler get hung up on, is they may have like a familiarity with like one bait or like one body of water or one little section, and then they just stick there, and then they get frustrated because they're not catching anything. But one of the things you always got to realize, that fish move. They move from depths to different types of water, like and it's all based off seasonal patterns or weather patterns and that sort of thing. So like, keep moving, don't get stagnant in like one location or one bait or whatever. Keep kind of advancing yourself forward. You don't necessarily have to go out and master a bait. You get good, you'll get used to it, but take notes all right, well, here was the situation. I threw a stick bait, and floated down the river, and the temperature was this, and it's approximately like this depth or whatever, and take like mental notes. Or I know a lot of people who write that stuff down, and a lot of people who tend to write it down and record it become really good anglers, because they have, information that's their own information too, not just hearsay in a sense. It's their information on their body of water and that sort of thing. Like, dude, last spring, I learned a completely like new thing to me. And it was because I had not gone out in water conditions like that. I always sat on the sidelines when our rivers would raise and get muddy. And I smack myself to this day, like, man, I missed so many opportunities to be able to go out fish and have a good day. And I got it was so bad here in Ohio and like in Illinois, like everything was just so flooded out for so long that I just got the itch so bad. I was like, screw it, I'm going out there. The water wasn't dangerous, but it was still high and it was still moving. It was still muddy. And I learned something. I learned like a pattern behavior that smallmouth have when the water's like that. They were hugging up in the vegetation, and the water wasn't clean by any means, but it was cleaner next to the vegetation because the dirt actually sticks to the weeds. And I didn't even really notice it until I would get out of my boat and walk, and I could see the dirt fall off the actual plants themselves. And then I would kind of be looking, and I'm like, that water is slightly cleaner than what the main water is, kicking up basically. And I would have done, I took a chance in a sense to do something different than what I was used to doing. And I think that's a key to becoming a successful angler, is to just get out of those comfort zones, do something that you're not used to, get in a place that you're not used to. You'll be surprised at some of the stuff that you'll learn by doing, taking that approach at times.
The weeds and stuff, man, they act like a filtration system in the water like that. So definitely fish tend to bury themselves or hide as close to or in that stuff. For that exact reason, man. That's very cool that you picked that up.
And to what you were saying about kind of just sticking with your comfort zone, I don't know. I know
You stuck to the whopper plopper because you're comfortable with it.
The black and blue jig for 6 years.
Actually, I used other colors of jigs this year. Thank you very much.
Well, this year,
but no,
I'm saying before. Black.
For the most part, yeah. And peanut butter and jelly. I really liked peanut butter and jelly. But yeah, y'all give me a hard time about the jig and whopper plopper and everything. And yeah, I did stay in my comfort zone there, but I was kind of at the same time building my comfort zone, and kind of I've kind of gotten where I've gotten decent with those techniques. This 2020, I do plan on branching out a little bit. I've got like a little list of different lures that I'd like to try, like to get better with. One of those being the swim bait. I just caught that first fish on a swim bait, and I've talked to several anglers. I've talked to yourself. I've talked to my buddy Brian Andrews. I've talked to Josh Stewart, and I'm sure I've touched on it with other anglers as well. Swim bait fishing, and that was the first time that I really stuck with it and used it, and then was successful with it. So it seems like such a versatile bait that you can use pretty much any time of the year.
It is.
So that's one that I really want to work on getting better with this year. Another one is the Ned rig. Everybody talks about how great they are at catching fish. I haven't caught that many off of it. I think I've caught 4 fish off a Ned rig. I do want to. One reason why I've kind of stayed away from it a little bit is because I've lost so many getting hung up and stuff.
Bro.
Now since I figured out how to JigMasters just came out with that Ned rig head, and y'all posted the video about how to rig it up weedless. I'm going to be throwing that quite a bit, and hopefully I can get more successful with that than I have been in the past. Did you want to say something, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I've learned about the Ned rig is if you're not getting hung up and losing baits, you're not where the fish are.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You ain't rigging them up weedless with JigMasters Ned rig head. Ned rig head. Jesus Christ. But yeah, another one that I want to work on is the shaky head.
Yeah.
I've heard Sam Jones and Brian talk about it so much. I want to work with that. It is, but tell me this: is there a huge difference other than the length of the worm between the Ned rig and a shaky head? Like,
Oh
is
yeah.
it worth like going after both?
You could definitely work both in the same situation, but if they're not taking the shaky head, more than likely, if you downsize to that Ned rig, which is very small, you know, you may see a difference in bites. Because a shaky head, usually it's anywhere between like 4 and 7 inches long, whereas a Ned rig's like what, 2 1/4, 2 1/2, something like that.
Yeah, and then but you got to think of a Ned rig, right? A TRD doesn't have any natural movement to the bait. It's just there.
Yeah.
And then with the shaky head though, especially if you get some of the ones that have the air in the tail of it, it's buoyant at that point, and that part can move by itself just with like slight current in a sense. So that's one of the good things is like you could throw shaky head nice and deep, and like you can let it sort of soak on its own and it'll get movement. That's the nice thing about that bait.
The Ned rig's got movement. It's just very subtle.
Right.
Whereas, you're getting a lot more movement out of a shaky head for sure.
Well, I'm probably gonna give both of those a shot this year. One more lure that I was wanting to try, I think it was the last one I got on my list at the moment, is the chatterbait. I want to give it more of a try, especially now that
The what? The what?
Chatterbait.
No, the what? The bradder bait.
But see, no, I'm gonna be above Brad's level with this because he's cheap.
Shots fired.
And I went all out. I went all out. After talking to Jody Queen, I got the jackhammers.
Oh, shuck you now. I don't even own a jackhammer.
I own 2 of them. Probably more eventually. There's still 1 or 2 colors that I really want that I haven't gotten yet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's like what, 4 techniques that I want to work on this year?
That's a lot, man.
Is it?
I usually try to pick 3.
I usually like pick 1.
For the whole year?
Yeah. Just kind of 1 that I'll try to concentrate on.
There's so much I want to learn.
Dude, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with having multiple ones. It's just for like me personally, like last year what a lot of times I'll do, because I have a ton of tackle, right? Like I've been doing this MTB box thing for like 2 years now. And so I had like jigs, I have all kinds of stuff. And up until like 2 years ago, I was throwing like high tech like crazy. And, and it was just like, it was such a successful bait. It was hard for me to put it down. But the instant that I kind of jumped over into lakes, I kind of realized that bait doesn't always excel like it does in a river. And the other kind of aspect of it was like, man, I just kind of need to try some of the stuff that I have, and so I picked jigs. And it was funny because the first time I decided it was in the river, and I caught like 18-inch smallmouth on it. It was hilarious. It was like a swim jig. But I kind of went in it because the swim jig that I chose had a rattle in it, and it was still when the water was real high and muddy. And so, but after that, we met up with Cody, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to buy some new jigs. Cause the one thing I kept getting frustrated with was losing them. And that's the other thing that I always got to kind of remember. You're going to lose fishing lures, man. If you're not losing them, and 9 times out of 10, you're in a bad spot. There's no cover. Everything's nice and flat. And, there's not going to be any fish there. So I had to get over that, but I kind of did want to find something though that wasn't as frustrating as dealing with snags, So I bought into the JigMasters mantra and started fishing those, and I took them up to with Brian, dude, and we just loved them, absolutely loved them, man, and got to see that jig excel in something that is really truly designed for. I mean, Brian has me throwing in basically looks like 20-30 foot tall trees basically underwater. You're hitting literally I know, but I mean, we were fishing like 12 feet deep, right? 12 to 15 mainly.
Yep.
And so you see these trees, Ryan, like they're on the bottom, and they are literally coming all the way up to about 6 inches below the surface of the water. And you could throw that jig and literally fill every branch on your way up out of the water. And it was crazy because it wouldn't get stuck. I mean, I think I lost one the whole time we were throwing in it.
I haven't lost many of those flipping jigs from JigMasters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's because they're the bee's knees.
That's right.
But,
that's F20.
Like I always picked just one, to kind of fish it in different scenarios. I don't want to like overload. So if I were you, if you're going to pick it, do like one at a time and like kind of stick with one for a couple months, and then, and try to look at it this way, do some research and say, okay, well, which one's going to work in which, season better, Yeah. You don't have to necessarily like limit yourself to that season, but be like, all right, is the chatterbait a little bit better here or there? That chatterbait's probably going to really excel when the water's muddy, dirty. It's got to give all that vibration. But if the water's super clear, man, and it's you got some calm waters or whatever, man, that shaky head probably can, especially if you got like a natural colored one. Brian throws this like really nice looking natural colored, I think it was a Zoom, wasn't it? And all I remember is him throwing them at me in the boat.
The shaky head?
Yeah.
Zoom trick worm.
Well, going to your point there, I recall when I talked to Jody Queen about using the jackhammer chatterbait. He said, he's using it in more shallow water. And, around here, that's why I haven't actually tried the jackhammer yet, because the fish ain't going to be up shallow right now. They're deeper because it's colder. So, I have to wait till it warms up a little bit for that. But, man, kind of what Brian was saying earlier, though, like, I've taken in so much knowledge so fast just from talking to all these different people and different anglers that, I'm just excited to try all this different stuff all at once. And I guess that's one reason why I got so many techniques that I want to work on.
Heck yeah, man. I dig it. It's only going to help take you to that next level,
Yeah. It's just like, for me, I just had to keep it simple. That's why I choose one, to try to gather up as much information as I could. And I literally, from the time I bought those jigs, it's kind of funny. I fished those mainly over the Kayak, even when I was back in the rivers again. But it worked real well, because at the time when it starts to warm up, the rivers, it's a good time to switch to like crayfish presentations as opposed to like a minnow presentation. Like smallmouth really kind of key in and feed, like, I don't want to say exclusively, but they really kind of start targeting the bottom more, in a sense, during the summer when it warms up a little bit. But I mean, they'll still hit, obviously, Kayaks. You just got to kind of get them in the faster moving water. So, but yeah, man, it'll be fun watching what everybody does this year. Brian says he's going to start cranking baits.
He needs to with that 6 cents box.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
Man, I got these things all over the house. I just realized that the other day. I need to go through all my gear and get my stuff put together.
Yeah.
I've been slacking and doing too many damn boat shows. What are you gonna do?
I know, man. I got this perfectly brand new dry suit, and I haven't had a chance to take it out yet. I need to get in the Kusa like at least one more time, man, because I'm about to sell it in the next couple weeks, and we've got another show coming up here soon.
Yeah, sell it to me. I could be a Jackson guy.
You
And a
don't want that.
bonafide? You want a bonafide?
No.
Get it.
He wants a pedal drive, man.
Well, the Kusa ain't a pedal drive.
No, I know. I said,
They
do you
have
want
a
a pedal drive?
in it.
You were complaining about how bad the wind. Listen, no. It's fine because I complained about the same thing. You were talking about how bad that wind was, in the boat traffic and the waves. The Kusa is just as bad as your Vibe is when dealing with that stuff. So, if that's one thing you want to try to kind of start working against, that's it. Don't get a Kusa HD, man, especially if you're in the lakes like that.
I just wanted to be cool like everybody else and have a Jackson.
You'll never be cool like everybody else.
Come up to the shop, man. I'll get you hooked up.
Oh, hell.
I'll get you in a Cruise FD. That thing's like a little rocket ship.
How big are those?
Not very big.
They're like the Kusa, a little bit smaller. They're fast.
Man, hey, I'm eyeballing that Bite FD. Man,
dude,
I like the Bite when they first came out last year, and now they got a pedal drive. But this is what I don't understand, and you might be able to help enlighten this since you're on the Jackson team and everything. How do you take a $800 boat, put a pedal drive in it, increase the price by like $1,400?
Because they put the new drive in it. And the actual Bite angler, so they're doing a Bite wreck boat and a Bite angler package this year.
And
Are they doing that in the FD as well?
No, the Bite FD is the angler version, but with a pedal drive. I believe the just regular Bite is $900, like $899 or something new. Maybe $799.
Yeah.
I forget, but
it's $899 and the Rex $799.
Okay, that's what I thought. Excuse me. So with that being said, yeah, they put the new pedal drive in it. It comes with the new Flex Drive 3D drive, whatever. Which, that was a question I got this past weekend was what's the difference between the old drive and the new drive? And basically they just took all the imperfections out of the old drive and just pretty much, put a new drive out. Is it worth it? Yeah, absolutely. The new drives are super smooth. You can maintain them a lot easier now and things like that. They upgraded the seat. There's a seat upgrade compared to the original Bite. And then, yeah, you got a rudder system plus the drive system. So that kind of makes up for the difference, which I believe the new Bite FD is $2,100 now. But I tell you what, man, that's a slick little boat. You might see somebody in one of those this year.
Did somebody just have a jet start up in their base?
I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah, dude.
What was?
I'm at the battlefield, bro. Shh.
Was that your coffee maker?
No, I think somebody's in the shower. I forgot to tell the family I was on a podcast.
But no, that Bite FD, it does look like a sweet boat. Like I said last year when I was looking to upgrade, I was kind of between the Vibe Sea Ghost and the Jackson Bite, and I actually wanted the Jackson Bite more.
Yeah.
It's just they were new, I was kind of looking for as cheap as I could get, and it just came out, so wasn't really anybody selling a used one yet. And I found a good price on the Sea Ghost, which I like my vibe, but
There's a lot of 2019 models on sale right now through various kayak companies.
Dude, we have the Coosa HD I had at Dale Hollow for 2,500 right now. That's just 400 more than the bite, and it's bigger and got better storage and gear tracks and everything.
or are you gonna buy it?
No, I'm getting a big rig.
Ooh, going big.
You're so cool.
Not as cool as you.
No,
Duh.
I am curious about that. I know we're probably getting pretty long here, so probably need to wrap it up pretty soon. But I do want to ask, you're getting a big rig, but you primarily fish, smaller rivers. Are you going to have a river boat as well?
Yeah, I am getting ready to sell mine, and my team boat will be the Kilroy HD. So I'm pretty excited. I'm really excited because I'm going to be taking Zach out with me. He's 4, and I'm going to talk. I talked with Grimsley about building like a little seat for him to put in the gear track and stuff. So I'm pretty stoked about that. So I wanted to try something different. I had the option to do it. Loveland was kind enough to let Brad and I, use a demo for this season. It'll go back to the shop, in the fall to get sold as a demo. But I at first was trying to, I was stuck on three boats, the Kilroy HD, the U-Pick, and then I actually was considering the Mayfly. But the Mayfly, the Mayfly is very similar to my boat now. It's kind of like a hybrid almost between if you took a Coosa HD and mixed it with almost like a Liska, and it's a little bit bigger, and it has but it had a lot of stuff that I really liked, how clean and open the deck is. Sorry.
Oh, bless you.
We're all sneezing here
I
tonight.
know, dude. The coronavirus is seeping into paddling pin. But I don't know. It was like I was so when that Kilroy HD first came out, I was just like, dude, that thing looks awesome. Like all the gear tracks on it, like just everything about it I liked. The only thing I was scared of, and I still am a little bit, is just it's big, dude. It's not a traditional sit inside kayak. It's 12 feet, 10 inches long, 36 inches wide. It weighs 15 pounds more than my boat now. And I'm like, good Lord, like that's a big kayak, really,
Good Lord, that's a lot of boat.
It really does look cool. I've never had an interest in a sit inside kayak, but that kayak does look pretty sweet.
It's not really a sit inside. It's just shaped like one. Like everything about it is sit on top. It just has the shape of it. But I think it's going to be, I'm super stoked. The thing is I do like the length of it. So if Zach is out there with me, it gives us both plenty of space. And, I'm looking forward to getting him out on the water and taking him out in the rivers with me. So that's what I'll be picking up here in the next couple weeks after the Cincinnati show.
Yeah, I know Nichols has been spending a lot of time in that boat, and he just has nothing but great things to say about it for what he does down there in Texas. So
yeah,
it's cool.
It'll be interesting to see how it performs in the rivers. I'm not really kind of even worried about it because I have a friend that I've been paddling with from basically the start, man, and he rolls he's got a feel free lure 13.5, you know what I mean? And he's never really had any issues, even like on the Little Miami where it gets, kind of tight and sketchy in some places. And, as long I don't think it's going to be a huge difference. It'll be interesting though, like storage wise, it's going to be kind of way different than what I'm used to. So
Yeah, 13.5 foot lure is a big boat.
Yeah. But
Cool, guys.
Word.
It's been fun. Anybody got anything they want to add before we close this out?
No, man, I'm just over here trying to make it, man.
got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Make it.
Yeah, buddy. Just making it.
Well,
Thanks for having us on, Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, appreciate the time.
Thanks for coming on.
Good conversation.
Making it happen.
We just making it, man.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody listening. When you're feeling the burn, come here to learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to do some work on that.
When you're feeling the burn, come here to learn. That's fishing for Noobs.
So creepy sounding.
All right, later, everybody.
Peace. Go check out the website, guys. Paddle, the letter N and fin.com. Also check out YouTube, youtube.com/paddle and fin. If you got a question, comment, want to hear from a future guest, feel free to email us at paddle, the letter N and fin @gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're doing giveaways, announcements, things like that at Facebook and Instagram at paddle and fin. Shout out to our show supporters, Rocktown Adventures, Loveland Canoe and Kayak, Hammered Lures, Fish Mob Lures, TRC Covers, Ketch Products. Go to ketchproducts.com. You can put the paddle and fin logo right on your catch board. Don't forget to go over and pick up your JigMasters Jigs. Use promo code PNF20 and save 20% today. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. It helps grow the audience, helps others find our podcast. So please drop a 5-star rating in on the podcast platform you're listening on. Don't forget about the recycled plastics program, you guys. Take your used plastic baits, put them in an envelope, mail them to the address in the show notes. Our man Eric Richards at Hammered Lures melts those down, makes new baits, and donates them to various chapters of Heroes on the Water.